So welcome, welcome. And I will go ahead and kick us off. I'll introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Blaza, she, her, hers, or just my name. And I am currently one of the co-chairs for FAN here at San Jose State. And I am going to pass it on to my co-chair, Alan, to kick us off.
All right, and thank you, Marie. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much again for coming. We know that you could be doing anything on this fine evening, but you came today to be in community with one another, to learn from all of our fantastic panelists today. And we are so excited to share all of the knowledge and learn from one another. But again, my name is Alan Guig, he, him, and I'm also the co-chair of San Jose State's Filipino Alumni Network, which was just started this year, which makes this conversation especially fantastic and especially important, because we know that as the hosting org today, we hope to just soak all of this information in. We hope to just use all the lessons learned, all this wisdom to equip us into how we can be better as an organization, be better community members into the future. And we hope that you can all take these same lessons to your own universities, whether your own universities have a Filipino Alumni Association, a Filipino Alumni Network, or if you're an ally tuning in and you want to see if you want to take any of these lessons learned today and apply to your own community, because we know that in many universities they have a lot of different identity-based alumni groups, and we hope that you are all able to see those intersections and feel free to connect with all of our panelists as well as us as a network. So getting us started, and then you can go on to the next slide. We wanted to just give some background on the Filipino Alumni Network. So we're going to be going over introductions, kind of giving a little bit of a landscape so you can kind of see what was the scene and how was it set when the Filipino Alumni Network, FAN, was introduced into San Jose State, and kind of walk you through our journey a little bit, because we know that we know that some folks in the audience are from San Jose State as well, and you may have kind of wondered in that process, like, did we just pop up out of nowhere? What was the work behind that we had to do behind the scenes? And we kind of also want to start introducing our panelists right after, which they can all speak on how varying, how similar all of their own experiences are. And then you can go on to the next slide. So at San Jose State, we are, fun fact, actually, if you didn't know, out of the 23 CSUs, we are the first CSU university to have been founded. Out of the entire state, we are actually the third largest county for with a population of Filipinx students. So it's actually super pertinent to have this conversation, to make sure that this resource and this organization exists for our communities to be able to tap into. And from our research that we've been able to do, and please drop in the chat if you know of one that we may have missed, because we would love to get connected and break bread and make community with them. But from all the UCs, of the 9 UCs, there are currently 4 as listed on the slide and as represented today on today's panel. And of the CSU universities, of the public universities, San Jose State is second to have created a Filipino Alumni Network right after San Diego State. So this is also super exciting, and as you can see, that this idea is not new by any means, and we are following in the footsteps of so many before us, and that is what we're hoping to achieve with today's conversation. And giving just last bit of background about San Jose State is that we actually have more than nearly 300,000 graduates since its establishment. And for those that may be unfamiliar with how a lot of alumni associations work, because we do know that there are some students in the call today, or maybe just alumni in general that may not be familiar. Under the overall Alumni Association umbrella, they tend to have a lot of identity-based groups, whether it be by geography, by cultural or ethnic identity, etc. And despite being one of the largest populations at San Jose State, we actually didn't have an alumni network about a year ago. So this is something that we're hoping to kind of have as our kickoff year, and we're really excited for it. And then you can go on to the next slide. So when we started, we put out an interest form. We by no means wanted to create a solution for a community that didn't even necessarily have any interest in it. We wanted to make sure, like, is this what the community wants? Is this what people want to see? And we put out an interest form just to kind of get a temperature check on things. We had the support of the overall Alumni Association University, and we had fantastic responses about a little bit over a year ago in January. About more than almost 50 alumni responded in just 2 weeks, and people wanted leadership positions. People put out different ideas that they wanted to see. So that was completely heartwarming to see. For us, we wanted to take all that information, and that is kind of like the backdrop of what kind of led us here today. And then you can go on to the next slide. So overall, with this slide, I think what I love about it so much is that you can see from both the top photo and the bottom photo being two unique semesters. So those are unique students in each one, but these, like, this is for San Jose State, at least, this is our membership. This is our community. You know, this is where we don't just talk about community, but we can see it and we can appreciate it. And that is also the hope of what alumni associations like our own, with like FAN, want to do. We want to connect that community. We want to pipeline this community so they have so many more resources, so many more connections beyond just their college experience. So they don't have to just join the Kuyate program for like a year or two, or they don't have to just go to one friendship games, right? And then they kind of just drops off, because community is lifelong, you know? And I think we're all here because we see that and we understand that, and we want to make sure that others can believe in that message and tap into that, all the benefits that come with that too. So that is what's kind of is our North Star in our work. And then we can go on to the next slide, and I'll pass it on to my co-Marie, who'll talk about us as an organization.
Awesome, thanks, Alan. So on this slide, just want to show our beautiful board, our founding board, who's in it right now. In our first year, we're so proud to, have built a community amongst ourselves as a board. But, these are all people who, on our first day, we asked, why are you here? Why FAN? And everyone brought up the same theme. Everything was threaded throughout our life experiences, that at the end of the day, we just really wanted to have this community. And it was really special to us. So this is who we are. This is our current board. Follow us on social media. I know that Malia is going to drop some links and stuff later on, but feel free to connect with us if you haven't already. You can go to the next slide. And really what our vision was built upon is, like I said, just that sense of community beyond, our experience at San Jose State. And so for any of you guys who are in the audience right now who didn't go to San Jose State, hopefully this is something you think about too, beyond your experience at whatever school or organization you're at, like, what does it mean to go beyond that experience and build an experience based on culture, And so for us, it was that, social, culture, professional experience that we wanted to make sure that we extended to, past just being, college students. Like, what did that mean to us? And so for our vision, it's based on that foundation for all of us, alumni, students, and definitely for allies alike. And how we're achieving this right now, this is early stages, this is stuff that we've thought about, but, we want to do this through networking events. We want to be able to develop professional mentorship programs, hopefully be able to get to, creating scholarships and really, investing back into the students, and then they come back and become alumni, and we just do that thing all over again. So really that's what we, hope to achieve. And then really just at the end of the day, providing a safe space for continued growth and exploration of our own cultural identity. I think it was really interesting for us to have been formed in such a crucial time in our history, like political, racial, all of that stuff was happening right when this our organization was created. And I think it really just helped us to find that safe space, as well as be able to talk about it and explore it and experience it together, and find support with one another. So that's who FAN is. But again, we're still babies, we're still small, we still, as much as we feel like we know what we're doing, maybe not, but we're following footsteps like Alan said. So I want to go ahead and kick us off officially. So if you want to move to the next slide, I would love to give a warm welcome to our panelists. And so use the reactions on Zoom, round of applause while you're still on mute. But I would love to introduce our panel for today. I have Dr. Christine Catipon, current president of the Filipino Alumni Chapter at UC Irvine. I have Eris Tagle, past chair for the Filipino Alumni Association at UCLA. Dr. Larry Natividad, board member of the Filipinx American Alumni Chapter at UC Berkeley. And last but not least, I have Chrissy Ocampo, co-chair for the Philam Alumni Association at UC Davis. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here tonight. And again, I want to see those reactions, wave, blow up the chat. Thank you so much for being here today. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, so we've got a bunch of questions we want to ask you. Questions are probably going to come into the chat, but Alan and I will be your moderators for tonight to field all the questions. But we want to start off. What our first question? Tell us about yourself. I know this is a loaded question, but tell us about yourself. What is your position in your Filipino Alumni Association? How it was created, and just kind of give us an idea of what it's looking like present day and how much it's grown in its inception. So I know that's kind of loaded, but however you feel like you want to answer it. So I'll start us off. I'm just going to pick on someone to start. So Dr. Christine, I'm going to have you start us off, and then everyone else can chime in after.
All right. Thank you so much, Marie. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Christine Catipon. I'm at UC Irvine, and we are the baby of the UC Filipino Associations because we were just started 2 years ago. We had our homecoming in February, and then the pandemic happened in the next month. So our first year was spent completely virtual, and that's kind of how we started, but it actually made our events very accessible to many of our alumni. And because we started it off in homecoming and we were taking all these people like that were attending, we got 300 signups the first day through social media and homecoming. So currently we are at about 470 members, and we won the award the first year for most events, most active chapter of like the 30 alumni chapters that we have at UC Irvine, because we really wanted to make like an impact our first year. And I think where we're at right now is, now that the pandemic's lifting, half of my EC board has gone on to better things. And so we're really slow, but our big event that we're hoping to do is Pack-In, that is coming up in April, and to be able to do an alumni reunion and pull people in like before, like to drink before and reminisce, and then I'll go see Pack-In together. So that's kind of where we're storing all of our energy, that and our scholarship program and our mentorship program. So how I got into it, I got hired at UCI. They're like, hey, can you be president? I'm like, okay. So that's basically it. I got hornswoggled into it. That's my little brief flip, but I'm happy to share more later.
Thank you so much. So you were voluntold pretty much for your role, but she is rocking it, killing it in that role, y'all. So thank you so much. I'll go ahead and give it to Chrissy next.
Hi, y'all. So yeah, I'm Chrissy. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the co-chair of our UC Davis Filipino Alumni Association. Technically, we were founded in like the late 90s, but we were absent. I don't know another word for absent, missing, in action for 2 decades. So I don't know if it still counts, but like, I don't know if we're the youngest or not. I don't know. But we kind of officially restarted again last academic year. So just very new, lots of growing pains. And I relate a lot to what Dr. Christina is sharing about like my executive board, just kind of also me included, disappearing from alumni association activities in the last 6 months. It's a rough year, it's a rough year, and a lot of transitions. So I'll talk a lot more about like how we were established or reestablished, and some of like our growing pains and stuff in the next couple of questions. But I guess other important things as far as context and my story and how I've got here is I'm a first generation college student. My parents did not want me to go to UC Davis. Well, I guess they kind of did. They wanted me to go to UC Berkeley. That didn't happen. I'm not smart enough for that. So I went to UC Davis. I wanted to go to UC San Diego. And that's the whole thing that happened. I got super involved in the Phil-Am organizations, as I'm sure many of us on the panel did. And I have worked for the last several years in higher ed and student affairs. So I've always stayed super connected to university staff and current students. And I've kind of been that bridge and that connection between our current students and our alumni. So that's kind of what launched me into a lot of this work.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Chrissy. Yeah, definitely want to hear about like what happened in those like lost years and like how you've like reestablished again. So looking forward to that. I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Larry next.
Hi, thank you and good evening. My name is Larry, and I am a current board member of PAC, which is the Filipinx American Alumni Chapter at UC Berkeley. We were founded in 1987, and about 15 years ago or so, PAC was not really that involved. In fact, PAC actually lost our charter. And what that meant was we were defunded and we were no longer part of the UC Berkeley alumni chapter. So 10 years ago, roughly, 2012, some of you may know her as Ate Cha or Charity Camado Nicolas. She single-handedly helped get PAC off the ground 10 years ago. So now forward to the pandemic, a lot of us got together through online and it made it very feasible and reasonable to organize online. And that's how I got involved as a board member. And please know that I'm here on behalf of Dr. Roman Samali, who is our current PAC president, and also Jocelyn Sherla Banaria and Claire Karobai, who is also a board member. So we have 4 board members that I'm presenting, but please know that I stand on the shoulders of a team. And to Chrissy, I want to tell you that I wasn't smart enough to get into UC Davis. So I'm just glad that we're on the same team and we're all a family here. So thank you. And I know there's more to talk about. We roughly have 2.5 minutes per, but there's going to be some rich discussions moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love that. I love that. Thank you. All right, Eris, I'm going to have you finish it off.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. You guys hear me? Yeah. So first off, it's an honor to be here, and I applaud you guys, San Jose State, for putting this together. So thanks for inviting me. So I'm Eris Tagle, representing UCLA. So UCLA's Filipino Alumni Association was founded in 1991. So just recently celebrated its 30th anniversary. I've been the chair. I was the chair of that organization 2 times in the past. Once, I'm a mid-90s grad, so it's actually the year after I graduated, I had become the chair of the Filipino Alumni Association. And then again, around 2009, I came back for a second stint when the organization had grown a bit. So right now, the current board has about 10 to 12 board members. I'm kind of enlisted as needed as sort of advisory. I'm on an advisory board. I do volunteer for still some of the major events like the annual scholarship fundraising benefit and awards dinner that we do, which I had a big part in establishing around the early 2000s. I'm happy to chat about that. The big accomplishments of PAA that UCLA have centered around 3 main tenets: so career networking, a lot of mentorship activities. So the career networking spans students as well as alumni, and then scholarship programming, specifically building up a scholarship fund. So one of the proud accomplishments that's ongoing is that UCLA PA has a scholarship endowment, which sits with the UCLA Foundation, and that's now valued. This was established, the endowment itself was established close to 20 years ago. That now holds about $200,000 and has awarded scholarships maybe to 150 students over that time. So it's a proud accomplishment, but one that kind of institutionalizes the presence of Filipinos and alumni contributions on campus. So I'd happy to talk about any of those sort of building blocks that we've established over the years.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I think that's a great start to lead us in. And we understand, kind of going into our next question, we understand that when we started this event and we opened up the space externally, we actually had multiple universities and individuals from those universities reach out to us. And they told us that, I would love to see something like this in my own university. I would love to see something like this for my own community. And I think that that's why this panel is so important, right? It's that representation, seeing that we can do it no matter where in your journey, whether it was in the middle of a pandemic, whether it was the past 10, 20, 30 years, etc. And I think that, I mean, some of you might have already touched upon it a little lightly, but we wanted to kind of hear those, like, if you could speak a little bit more to the sentiment of what were you thinking with, like, when you started getting involved, right? Like, were you voluntold? Did you volunteer? Like, what made you choose to not just be a member in this? What made you choose to be on the board? What made you choose to be in that position, right? Because I'm sure a lot of our attendees, a lot of us on our current board, you know, we may be thinking like, what does our own activity, what does our own involvement look like in the future? So if any of you could speak to that, we would absolutely love to hear it. And then how about we can switch it up? How about pass it to Chrissy to start us off?
Yeah, I think there's the two main things I want to say as like part of my journey and my context to this, which I started to share earlier, right? So I think number one is I've always been interested in our histories as Philam orgs. So as a student leader, I was super interested. I was engaged in what that looked like. Even just hearing about like previous events or like old chismes from like older friends who are like, oh yeah, did you know that this and that happened, blah, blah, blah. Like, I loved that. I'm also a Gemini, so I love it. Gossip, chismes, please give it to me. So I loved all of that. I valued all of that. And it's part of our oral traditions and our oral histories, right? So it's something that I'm here for it. So I started connecting more and more with alumni in my third year, and really got to know the beginnings of our organizations, but also some of like, you know, what we all call the dark ages, where maybe we didn't exist as an organization for a minute, or what that looked like. And that was also something I always wanted to share with others, because I mean, not to be hella corny, but I'm gonna be corny, like no history, no self, right? Like we hear that from I don't know, from like the mid 2000s to like now, like it's just been part of like, I guess like a core tenet or a pillar of like our work as Philam organizations and as Philam leaders. So like that was something that I lived by and I breathed it. And I was just like, I have to know this. But even without that, I think it's core to who I am as a person to gather as much data and information and story as I can and use that to inform our next steps, and also to dream up other possibilities, right? So it just is, again, it's core to who I am as a leader. So that's the first part, is that I've always been interested in our histories. The second part is that, again, I consider myself a connector of people, and this has been a recurring theme throughout my life, but especially when I came back to UC Davis to work as full-time staff. Because I did my undergrad at Davis. I went and I got my master's at University of San Francisco. And then I came back to work as full-time staff. And it had only been 2 years since I had graduated. So there wasn't much time that had passed between me and the current students, or the students who were now graduating fourth years, when I was, when I had met them as first or second years. And so they again started looking to me. And I think also just in my life, I'm the oldest daughter. I'm an ate. So it's always been in my nature to mentor and share with others like how I work through the world, and hopefully they can figure out how they want to work through the world. So what I noticed when I came back is that current students didn't have as much of a connection with alumni as I did when I was a student. But recurring issues, like cyclical issues, were coming up in community, right? Like it's always happening, where you notice the same things happening every year. And some of the leaders were like, what do I do about this? Has anyone ever been through this before? And I was like, yeah, I got you. Let me connect you to this other person, right? But then it also came to the point of like graduation, where they're like, I really want to explore this type of field. And I was like, I got you. And it also just became part of my job. Part of my responsibilities was also connecting to alumni from my department. And I ended up with a ton of archives, which again, I loved, like seeing names and pictures of people from the past. Super cool. But all of this led to greater conversation about what would it be like to then have an alumni association. So as I shared, it did exist in the late 90s, early 2000s, but hadn't for a while. And I was processing with one of my friends who graduated with me. And I was like, what would it be like if we brought our association back? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was just like, all right, bet. So he met with the previous chair who actually worked at University of San Francisco. And I met with the Cal Aggie Alumni Association, which is, our main chapter of associations here at UC Davis. And it actually took like a 2-year process of becoming like a recognized part of the Cal Aggie Alumni Association. And that was for several reasons. Number one, there's a lot of staff turnover. So the person I had met with when we first were like, let's do it, he left shortly after. And then they hired another person and then they left after. And there was lots of changes in the process. It was very unclear. Like we were like, do we have to register? Do we just tell you that we're existing? What do we need? Do we need board members? Like, can we just do an event? And it changed so much. So finally last year we had a staff member who was staying, who was permanent. They had a better outline of a process and they were like, here's what we need from you. They wanted a constitution. They wanted us to fill out a registration process. They wanted us to meet with them quarterly. There was like volunteer leadership meetings and then a calendar of events that had to meet certain pillars of the Cal Aggie Alumni Association. So those were some of the things that we did. But of course, one of the first things we had to do before that was find a full board of members. So that was a whole other challenge. Yeah, but it was, I think this is also just like part of who I am as a community leader. It's in my birth chart. If you read my birth chart, it literally is like, this is just what happens to me. So sorry, that was really long, but those were all the things I was thinking of. Hopefully it's helpful.
No, yeah, for sure. That was actually super helpful. I really appreciate you sharing all of that, because I think a lot of us that try to do this work, that whether it be a student organizing work, whether it be alumni association work, right? It's because we see the value in the connection piece. And especially like when you spoke to yourself as like, say, being a connector, it's understanding that there's so much value that we can learn from everyone else besides just us in the room. And we only grow stronger when we're together. We grow so much more full when we're together, so thank you for sharing that. And then I can pass it on to Dr. Larry.
Yes, thank you very much. I don't know where to start. I mean, there's so much to say. So in terms of PAC, the Filipino American Alumni Chapter, we started, like I said, we kicked off about 10 years ago under the leadership of Ate Cha. And during the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people just got online and we started organizing. One thing that I want to say, or a couple of things in terms of advice or mentorship, if you will, is, I know I've learned not to ask about age per se, but I'm at a point where I have a family, my kids are a little bit older now. So because of that, I have more to give. I have more energy to give, number one. Number two, because for me, I'm a little bit chronologically older, I think about legacy and I think about how to give back. So because what I did at UC Berkeley and in Northern California, that was the groundwork of what connected all of us in terms of my friendship with Roman, with Claire, with Jocelyn, with Charity, for example. That built into the idea of becoming part of the board, and it was a natural fit. You should have been there when Dr. Samily, Roman Samily, agreed to be our president. I mean, it was such a celebration. So the critical thing is, like Chrissy said, find connectors, find common ground, and most importantly, you have to have fun, okay? Yes, there's politics. Yes, you got to deal with the environment. Yes, you got to deal with admissions. Yes, you got to deal with socioeconomic status. Yes, you got to deal with all these big issues. But as I wrote in the chat, Eris talked about the 3 tenets. Chrissy talked about pillars. In terms of UC Berkeley's PAC, we wanted to keep it simple. So we came up with the 3 pillars. 3 pillars. Number 1 was focusing on the Grace Assumption scholarship. Tragically, about 30 years ago, Sister Grace was murdered at UC Berkeley. Now she has a scholarship. So we're going to focus on that, number 1. Number 2, focus on homecoming. Why? Because alumni tend to want to get together during the homecoming event, especially during a Cal football game, and get to know each other, quite frankly, drink, have a good time, confess, oh my gosh, I always loved you, but now I'm with someone else. You know, they want to do these confessionals. That's what alumni people do, right? So you want to have fun during that. And then also our appeal grad. We want to make sure that, I think Alan talked about this very eloquently. And so with Marie, the pipeline of resources is exactly what UC Berkeley wants to do, UCLA, UC Davis, San Jose State University, et cetera. That is critical with what you want to do. So in closing for this segment, because I want to give time to Dr. Christine, is focus on fun, focus on knowing yourself, understand your life milestones in order to give back, because you don't want to be half-baked in your commitment. You want to be full on, just like what you did when you were in undergrad, okay? So focus on fun, your 3 tenets or a conceptual framework, and then move forward.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like I'm just having fun just listening to you. Like I really do. Like, and I think that is what it's all about, right? People, we have so much stress and negative vibes, or just so many things that we can worry about outside of, like, just in general in life. So to be in community and just know that this is a place of comfort, like that's what we can hope to do, right? For each other. So thank you for sharing those words. Then Eris, I can go ahead and pass it to you.
Yeah, well, it was exciting, you just on your first slide, to see that you had established this organization just last year. I mean, this was sort of the vision that a lot of it, you know, back in the day, we wanted to have alumni associations, a lot of campuses. So I applaud that, but I think you're at a critical stage now where you ask yourselves, well, why do we exist? Why do we need a Filipino alumni network, right? And that was when UCLA PAA was being formed. That was a critical question. So this is the 90s, right? And I actually was still an undergrad when they were formed. I didn't join as chair. I was the second chair after I graduated. But they were asked point blank, well, why do you need a Filipino Alumni Association? There's already an Asian Pacific alumni. There's already these regional networks. There's already the academic, you know, for the engineering. You know, why do you need a PAA? That was valid, but I say, why not? Everybody else is doing it. It's just in different ways uplifting our community. So alumni of any ilk or whatever of a university will get together for whatever reason. It could be the Greek system, it could be their academic departments, it could be they were athletes, but all they have in common is that they uplift each other, provide opportunities to each other that are unique. Now we can do the same thing. Now, Filipinos as a people, sometimes we're too caught up in assimilating to what's out there, what quote mainstream is, that we don't see the benefits to that. Now here we are 30 years later. I think it's very visible what the benefits are, you know, to having a Filipino Alumni Association, yet we still haven't organized that many of those. So I think you guys have to nail down what your why. And for practical purposes, what you hope to accomplish, whether again it's scholarship, career networking, or whatever. But that was really critical when PA was being formed. So everything from writing the Constitution, you know, all the mission statement, all that stuff, anything a nonprofit does, but to getting sort of recognized by the university, which then can come in with sponsorship and funding. And so that was years in the making, but it got to the point where we showed these programs that we believed in, which were a mentorship program and a scholarship program, that the university had to take notice. They said, oh, hey, look at these guys. Like they're not officially, you know, they're affiliated with us, but look at what they're doing. We want them. How do we get them into the fold of the main UCLA Alumni Association? And that's what eventually happened through hard work, through a leadership pipeline. Thankfully, you know, in that 30 years that PAA has existed, well, there were some rough stretches for sure, but for the most part, it's been continuous for the 30 years because there has always been a leadership pipeline that's been fostered every year. Like literally, I think you guys should already be thinking down the road, who's going to be my officers next year, in 2 years, and 3 years, whatever. Maybe identifying student leaders right now who are in their senior year, and you know, cultivating them and say, hey, June, hey, happy graduation. How'd you like to join FAN? because you never want to stop developing that leadership pipeline, because when you don't think about that, then the leadership that's there starts to get tired and moves on, goes to grad school, have families, all that stuff. So you always have to be thinking about that leadership pipeline. I will say that because of all of that and sort of our continuous leadership and the programming and all that stuff, it led me to actually, I'll throw this out there because I think it's relevant. I actually was elected to the main UCLA Alumni Association board and eventually became the vice chair and chair of that. And that was a direct outgrowth of being nominated because of what the Filipino Alumni Association did, which was essentially explicitly showing through all of our programs, the scholarship, our awards, dinner, all that stuff, that Filipinos in the Filipino community made direct contributions to the university, which frankly otherwise would have gone unrecognized. And that's the role that you guys can play. So who at San Jose State should be recognized? What contribution should be highlighted that the main university otherwise would not? And that's been one of our main goals. All to Larry's point though, while having fun, like every year we have our scholarship awards dinner. It's a dinner dance with a DJ. We drink and dance, but we're also recognizing folks who have accomplished quite a bit, and students for scholarships. So we're accomplishing folks who have tangible contributions to the university or at the university.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and with the pipeline, right, there's so many different reasons why any individual would want to join an organization, right? Like just because we have a vision, like we want you to do this program, right? People join for social reasons, cultural reasons, mentorship reasons, right? And I think it's understanding that the pipeline can have so many different expressions, and you'd be surprised at how many different ways it can grow. So I really appreciate the sentiments that you were sharing on that. And then pass it off to you, Dr. C.
All right. Well, I forgot to mention earlier, we did have somewhat of an alumni association about 25 years ago, and it was the Kababayan alumni organization, which was our social club on campus. And I mean, I was involved in Kaba for PCN, which we called it back then, but I wasn't really that involved in the group. And I knew a lot of my peers, didn't resonate with the party atmosphere that it was back then. So when I was approached to start the Filipino chapter, I had a very different experience, because at the time that I was approached for it, UCI had already wanted to establish more affinity groups. So a lot more groups that were based on, cultural background and wanting to celebrate that. So, so we had already had, several cultures already represented, and they were just kind of looking for the right person to kick off the Filipino group, which I would have wanted to have called it Filipinex, but they already named it before I could change it. So a little bit about me. I work as a clinical psychologist, and I'm working at the counseling center at UC Irvine. So I do a lot of outreach and counseling with our current students of my alma mater. And so I found myself like giving a lot of outreaches, to our Filipino orgs, of which there are many more than were there when I was there, like in the mid-90s when I graduated too. That's why I think just like knowing the same people. And so I think I was really lucky because it's already established. They're like, this is what we can do for you. These are the rules. And what's interesting about our alumni association, I ran away from it for the last 25, 30 years as I graduated. I'm like, no, don't take my money, whatever. But once it was like a Filipino option, all of a sudden that opened up. And UC Irvine has been really interesting because we work together as chapters. And so there's a little bit of a competitive flair, that's why we won the most active, and we also won the most money raised in a scholarship. And this was just our first year because we really wanted to make a difference. And of course, the competitive nature is something that appealed to us. And so I had a lot of support. because there was already, everything was established. This is what you do to get more funding. This is the tier level that you have to have. These are the board members. And it was also great timing because it was homecoming. They're like, okay, we want to establish this next month at homecoming. And one of my best friends from college who introduced me to my husband, she was like so beloved. Her name is Jenny Nazarino Lindgren. And she's my college roommate. I immediately grabbed her, and I just like people that I knew, I loved. I was like, you're going to be on the EC with me. And so that made it fun. That made it, like family. And she was so beloved that she was able to pull in most of our initial sign up. So I would say definitely use the people that who know a lot of people. Like I was, and then when we were at homecoming, like sign up if you're interested in being scholarship chair or social media chair or communications or mentorship. And we got signups for all of them because people were just so excited to see that this was finally happening. So really the establishment didn't take any effort on my part, but organizing the EC did. And organizing just the events, and yet because people were so excited that it was finally starting, which I think is going to be really exciting for FAN. It's like, oh my gosh, this exists. Oh my gosh, how can I get involved? Oh my gosh, I'm going to find that ex-boyfriend or somebody that I danced in Pack-In with, and so it was very organic. And you better believe I'm pimping this out at my work, like, oh, did you know there's a scholarship thing? Oh, did you know there's a mentorship thing? Because it's not just us, it's also across all of the chapters, but I feel especially connected to meeting with the Filipino orgs on campus and being able to say there's more after graduation. Because so many of my students, in therapy, they're like, I don't want to graduate. I'm going to miss my family. I'm like, you don't have to. You can all join the alumni chapter. And they're like, oh my gosh, is there one? Yes, let me tell you about it. So, I feel very fortunate that it was more of a community in already an established, way of supporting all of the chapters. And we had exponential growth that first year because of the excitement of it. So I think it's a matter of timing and, just the virtual nature of all of our events that first year. I think the challenge is keeping it going, because I will be stepping down in June because I'm also the current vice president of the Asian American Psychological Association. It's hard to juggle two presidencies now. So I don't know who's going to step in, but I feel confident in our future because we were able to establish something great the first 2 years of our org. But we had a lot of support. So I would say, use your networks, find those beloved people who know everybody else, and really use your powerful alumni. In our first year, we used people like Jeremiah Abraham and Kevin Nadal, and Arnel Calvario. Who doesn't know Arnel Calvario, And so we were able to really tap into the alumni talent and history makers, and like more people to bring in interest. So yeah, I think there's a lot of power in alumni, just letting them know that you exist and they will come. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say one quick comment, but I am so happy that you shared that, because I think with our own journey at the Filipino Alumni Network, we really resonate with that, since we know that we have this great idea, we want to see it happen, but when we put out the interest form and nearly 50 alumni from multiple different years were saying that, yeah, we would love to see this. Actually, can I do a committee? I was like, whoa, people are really down. Like they want to volunteer their time and like see this happen. So I think it was super great. And for anyone on the call that wants to be part of your own universities, whether you already have one or you want to start one up, like I think you'd be surprised, especially from everyone who's on this panel. Like I think you'd be surprised with how many folks that may want to decide to join you along the way. So definitely go for it. And I can pass it on to my co-founder Marie for the next question.
Awesome. No, thank you so much. There were so many great nuggets in here. I had to bust out the pen and start writing some stuff because there was just so many great things. But I really loved what everyone said, like just the motivations, the organicness of like how this really can foster and develop over time. I really love that. And it's funny because so I'm also part of a different organization too, where I'm chairperson for that. And it's been a struggle trying to get that off the ground. And I was just talking to like one of the deans at the school, and she was all like, well, why are you chasing something backwards? Like, you should just create a buzz now. And that totally resonates with what everyone's saying is like, use who's here now, create the buzz, create the motivations, create what's organic now. And then those people from all those years will be like, oh, fans up to something? Well, I want to join it now too. Because I think how me and my other organization is doing, like, we're trying to track back 20 years time. Like, where do we find these people? But instead, you know, instead of chasing, creating that buzz, that community now that people would want to like be interested in. So I'm glad that that resonated. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would love to switch over, you know, especially since Dr. Christine was talking about like the first year, and, you know, I feel like that's really resonating with our group right now, is that we're also in our first year of establishment. And so, you know, would love to just hear about like, yeah, like how did you navigate, you know, those first years of creation, or even your first year in your term? You know, what were the goals that you've set up for yourself in that first year? You know, what was success? What did that look like? And just some challenges. And I'll open it up. I think at this point, like, we could just kind of like talk through whoever wants to answer the question. So I'll put that question there, and whoever wants to chime in.
Well, I'll chime in real quick. I beat you, Eris. So this is our first year too, okay? In the sense of we had to establish or reestablish our constitution. We had to reestablish our meeting norms. And in terms of the advice that we are all giving you, we had to learn to say no. Okay, hear me when I said this. You have to learn how to say no, because a lot, like Alan said, and Marie said, a lot of people are going to come in strong. They're going to say, I want to do this committee. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do a political thing. I want to do a fundraiser, etc. You have to know your capacity, and you have to make sure that you're grounded on these 3 pillars or these 3 tenets. You know, there's something magical about the number 3, so that you could anchor your proposal on, so it's simple to understand. You know, in the private sector, also in the public sector, people talk about, what is your elevator speech? How can you sell the idea? Well, you know, Dr. Samley, for example, on the chat said, well, I'm Larry the fun guy. What that means is I want to get people together and get them organized and have them have fun, so that we could work on the real work. So you have to know how to say no to certain things, but that's going to be up to you all. And that's kind of the first year advice that I would have to share. On the chat, I also shared that you have to understand the system. Yes, you want to go organically, but there has to be a structure, a system to build your alumni association so that you could be successful moving forward. I mean, already we, Roman, Claire, Jocelyn, Charity, and myself, we are already looking forward to the next group of people that's going to take over. Quite frankly, we don't have a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, bi identified person as part of the board. That's something that PAC is lacking, and that's something that we want to go over. It's not a quota system whatsoever, but rather we understand our community, and these are the needs of the community. So know when to say no, have a structure, and then also have fun. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, you can chime in. I definitely agree with all of Larry's points. And for you guys specifically, just having started the organization, I'll cover some of the more startup organization factors that we faced. One, first of all, is, you know who your audience is, and know who your members, your constituents are, because that's going to be unique to everybody. I think when at UCLA, when Filipino Alumni was being formed, there was this dynamic of, is this just an extension of the student organization, right? Which in itself at UCLA has a very long history. Samahang Filipino, they're going on their like 50th anniversary. But there was a lot of sentiment towards, okay, is this just a an alumni association for folks who are in Samahang, like so they have an extension of whatever. And I didn't necessarily buy into that. And I'm like one of the biggest Samahang fans there were. I was the president of that too. But to me, that was like you're not casting a wide enough net. There are plenty of Filipino graduates, alumni who want to be active as community leaders. So there's you got to kind of put out that perspective of where you're coming at. I mean, you're only an undergrad for a set amount of time, or a grad student or whatever, but you're an alumnus forever. So if you want to put that out there, like kind of look at your, I don't know, you have their survey response, but look who's out there. And you've got to meet them where they are. And I mean that, like, this is obviously a volunteer driven organization. So people's capacity is going to be different. You know, maybe the older alumni that are established with kids or whatever, maybe they can only serve in an advisory capacity. Maybe the folks who do like the hard work, the day-to-day, the operations, running the finance, those are your more, I guess, the recent grads or folks, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, the folks with more time that don't have kids yet or whatever, divided up that way. But if you try to serve everyone and be everything to everybody, that's kind of where things start to get a little muddy. So it's great that you have all these volunteers signing up, but kind of jot them down and get the ones who are serious, say, okay, what is your capacity? Can you commit to a meeting once a month? Do you want to organize just a one-time event? And also, as you're having these conversations, ask them for their why. Like, why are you doing this? Is it just to socialize, or, I want to meet other alumni for networking purposes, or just common interests, whatever it is, find out their why, because there's always an alternative. Folks can say, well, why do I need to join you guys? San Jose State has a great alumni association. I love being with my, fellow history alumni, whatever. Why do I need you guys? So what is your, I'm in marketing and analytics, so I say this, but what is your value proposition, right? Like, why do you exist, and why, kind of like the elevator speech, like, why do you exist, and why should somebody who's an alumnus come to you when they can engage with San Jose State at so many other touch points? And then there's the practical things you got to think about building an organization. One of the main reasons we aligned with the main UCLA Alumni Association was, one, funding, but two, nonprofit status. So if we're sponsored by them, they have a 501c3. So any donations that we could collect, they're tax deductible. So if you want to take the steps to go and do that yourself, that takes potentially years to establish your own 501c. So there's those kind of practical things that I would think you guys as the core board members think about. But in the end, this is a cultural organization. It's not academic based or whatever. So people are here because it means something to them. They have some passion for what you do and some passion for serving the community. So that's the biggest crux of it. Like, what is your audience and what is going to resonate with them in terms of those passions? I had mentioned like the organizationally we did scholarship, mentorship, and networking, but underlying all that was community service. People wanted an outlet for community service, and especially tailored to the Filipino community and their alumni community. That's you guys. And you have the added benefit of having the university's brand, San Jose State's brand, with Filipino alumni, so rather than just some Filipino, organization, of which there are so many out there. So take advantage of those assets, whatever you have with San Jose State, maybe famous alumni, or whatever they are, and get them involved.
Well, I can speak to the first year aspect. It was already established that the expectations for us were to raise scholarships and to create mentoring opportunities. So again, it didn't take a lot of creativity on my part, but how to create that so that would be successful. And again, the timing, I don't want to keep harping back on the pandemic, but I think it came at a time that people were so starved for connection that it was easily marketable. Like, hey, let's form an online community where we can have these things and hopefully in the future have an in-person event, and people finding each other on our social media pages and responding and like, oh my gosh, you're here. And, it really is, I think, our focus has been about connection. And I think that's just like my natural tendency anyways, as a therapist, like how can we create community? How can we support our current students? Because I love the experience of being able to support our students. And I know so many of our alumni do as well, whether that's through mentorship programs, whether that's through scholarship. I think it just capitalizes on the kapwa that we all have, and to be able to give back to the place that did so much for us, I think is already a natural motivation to want to make sure that this keeps going. I think the challenge, I think Dr. Larry was speaking to it before, being able to say no. I mean, I was so caught up with all of the energy and enthusiasm of a young EC who had only graduated really in the last 2 to 3 years. And here I am, like, graduated in the mid 90s, and like, oh, let's do this. Oh, let's do this. And it was almost like this frenzied excitement. I'm like, okay, do you want to? And I think what ended up happening is we burned out after our first year. We set such a high bar, and those young people, with the pandemic lifting, they just started finding their jobs after college, and they no longer had the time and space. And so what we have started doing is creating co-chairs within the committees. So not just having a primary chair, but having co-chairs for some of the busier committees like finance and social media and the mentorship program, because those were our big ones, and scholarship. So really most of our committees, so that they could find some work-life balance, because it is a volunteer position, and just trying to create more excitement for it, like playing trivia games. Let's do online karaoke, which we did for one of our things. Like, let's capitalize on the interests that our alumni love, but really finding one another again, and having a place to find one another. So I think the timing of it is great. We're still very active. I mean, we are really ramping up for this pack-in event, hoping that it will be in person, that some Omicron strain B2A doesn't derail this effort. But, if it does, then life will go on. But I think, just like this whole gathering, we find community so easily, because it's such, core part of who we are as Filipinos. So, it doesn't have to be so effortful. Like, if we rely on connection, we rely on fun, we rely on, just the fact that we had the shared experience from going to this school. I feel like, yes, logistics will work itself out. But if you're clear on your mission, for us, it's scholarship and mentorship and fun. It'll fall into place if you have like good people to work with in your EC. It sounds like you all do. It sounds like you all get along really well. So there are a lot of advantages that you have, and you're all passionate. That's, I think, also what was a big key to our success, that we were all so invested and passionate, and people who met us could feel it, and I think that is also the case for FAN. So I have every confidence in the world you're going to be a great success.
I feel re-inspired to actually do things with my alumni association again now, because we've been hella MIA, which I think definitely speaks to like the challenges of these leadership positions, right? And like 3 things I want to share in terms of challenges is working with the constraints of Cal Aggie Alumni Association. Like, I think a lot of the alumni associations from the UC level, if you are established and you want to fundraise for scholarships, you basically have to agree to an endowment, and you have to agree to raise a specific amount of money that you kind of only get like 1,000 to 2,000 to actually give. So you have to raise like 25,000 or something, 50,000 or something. You can give away like 10% of that. And for my board, we were like, so we're going to raise $50,000 for the university, but we can't give $50,000 away. what? We were confused. We didn't like that. So we did not, we decided not to do that for the time being. We were like, okay, well, they're giving us part of a budget, so that's cool. But this is not the right time for us to work towards an endowment at the time. So that's what we decided. I think for us also, like a lot of us come from very like really low income backgrounds, and we were like, oh, asking our community to fundraise that much money as a commitment for like the next 2 to 5 years is a lot. So no, thank you. And especially knowing our audience also that we were a lot of leaders, like, and a lot of the people who would donate are probably leaders who donated a lot of our time already. So that was one constraint and one challenge for sure that we're still navigating. I mean, I think part of us as a team really taking a step back from Alumni Association activities this year is because of our tension with the Cal Aggie Alumni Association, which is unfortunate because, as I shared with you all, we only got reestablished. I was looking at the timeline, August 2020. So, you know, for us to have like a really great year last academic year, and then to be like, oh, this partnership isn't working for us. Again, really unfortunate because we had worked, I specifically had dedicated like 2 years to setting up a foundation for this. And I'm okay with it because like things happen and you live and you learn, and it's still been a great experience to connect with community. And I think like the other part of this is that I think we wanted a space for ourselves, like just to be quite honest, like a lot of my generation of folks we were like, we only see each other when really tragic events happen. We have had several really impactful community deaths that we were like, we're only seeing each other when this happens. Maybe we should see each other beyond this, right? So I think part of it was a lot of selfish needs of wanting to connect outside of that. And then again, me being that connector, that person, that resource, like someone who is very heavily committed to dismantling anti-Blackness in our community. A lot of people reached out to me between maybe February 2020 and July 2020 to talk about, hey, I know that you're connected with a lot of alumni. What are they doing in thinking about anti-Blackness with their families, with our communities? What does this look like? So that became a huge part of us, like getting an audience beyond our usual people. Another challenge has been engaging younger alumni, as I shared with you all before. Like, I think a lot of the younger alumni that I was in contact with, or the current students who then became younger alumni that I was in contact with during my time as an employee at UC Davis, they just didn't have the same connections. I think they wanted to make that connection, but it wasn't there. So really engaging the younger alumni has been difficult. I love that PAC has a younger alumni like chair and portion to their team, because that's something that I want to implement for the future with our UC Davis Association. And then from a leadership perspective, like as a co-chair, empowering my board members to follow through on their responsibilities independently has also been a challenge, because myself and my other co-chair, we were like, hey, we're the type of leaders where if you say you want to do something, we're here to support you, bounce ideas back with you, like, but at the end of the day, we want you to feel empowered to do it. And I think for some of our board members, that was something that we ended up having to do a lot more hand-holding than we expected. So I think, again, just from a leadership perspective, like it just becomes something that you end up carrying more of when you didn't really expect that. So yeah, those are some things that I thought would be honest to share with all of you as leaders.
Yeah, and thank you so much for everyone who shared. I think I want to hold on to this piece real quick into our next question, because a lot of us, like, we know that we want to inspire folks to do this work, right? And we want to say what's possible, what you can achieve. And as much as we very much are like On roses and rainbows side, right, there's also very much the challenge, which scares a lot of folks from getting involved. Like, it's like some of us may believe in the idea, like those in the call today may want to like potentially do it in next year or in the future. Those who will watch this recording may want to like see it like for themselves or their own school. But honestly, maybe I'm scared of inactivity. I don't want it to, like, when I pass the baton, what if there's no one to grab it, right? Or what if, and Dr. C, you also mentioned the burnout piece, right? Like, what about if we just, we put on all our programming, all of our visions, but then the timing behind all these ideas, it gets challenging. So my question is to all of you, like, can you speak to that time management piece, like for those that are curious about this, like, does a lot of time need to go into this? Like, is it kind of fluid per year to year? And also, maybe is the answer more in the programming, like the events that you put on? Like, is it just that you need to scale it back or be really smart and tactical with that? Like, whatever it is, whatever works for you all, we would love to hear that. And I'll kind of just keep it open so you can all just jump in.
Yeah, I'd say that's a direct function of honestly what you want to be as an organization, and you have to think very careful about that, and take it in phases. You're in year one, right? So maybe the time now is to think about what do we want to look like in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years. Presumably, you're going to grow in terms of programming, which then translates to more hours and time commitment, but that's really up to you. When we were all part of student organizations or other well-established organizations, there was an expectation that for the most part, you did what the organization always did in the past because of tradition or whatever. You're in a situation where you're creating your own. So there's nobody telling you, oh, you must do a scholarship or you must do it. And Chrissy's point, like talking about like building an endowment for a scholar, that didn't happen for UCLA until year 10 of the organization to even start that. And it was year 15 that we actually built that. And that was really because the board at that time saw that as a long-term play. And so now here, 10, 15 years after that, that endowment is generating interest in like funding scholarships. But that's not for everybody. I mean, you have to know who your folks are. If you have the type of folks that are going to want to commit 10 hours a week, 15, 20 hours a week, and put on these huge events that attract hundreds of people, then your hours of time commitment will reflect that, but you have to do it in a way that these folks are engaged. I mean, that's the tricky part here, because everybody, again, especially if the younger alumni, you're used to the model of student organizations where everybody's on campus, at least in non-pandemic times. Whereas as alumni, everybody's spread out and you're really only there of your own free will and because you're motivated. There's nothing to prevent anybody in any capacity who's volunteering from walking away. Now, it'd be kind of messed up in some cases, but still, you're not going to fire somebody if they don't show up. I mean, so I'd say the answer to that lies in how ambitious you want to be and what you think is realistic. Right. So we got to a point where honestly, it was crazy. Like we did a scholarship benefit every year. There was like 200-300 people. We had awards, and that was like, to some people, was a full-time job. I mean, I'm proud of what we accomplished, but it did, without the pipeline that I was talking about of new people coming in and people being established in committees and then becoming board members, we couldn't have pulled that off. So you have to be honest with yourself as to what your capacity is. And you're just starting with 20 folks. Okay, so what can we do with 20 people who are, what's realistic? I don't know, 5 hours a week, 10 hours a month, and start there and build from there, and then build your pipeline and see what you realistically want to be. If you just want to be a social organization, that's fine. If you want to be just a scholar, whatever it is, but be realistic. And, don't get into something where all of a sudden there's a board member that's by surprise, like, oh my God, I'm spending 30 hours a week. I've got my life. Like, that shouldn't be a surprise. You're setting your own agenda. So if you're planning out, if you have a retreat or something in the beginning of the year, you set out your agenda for the year and you be realistic. You guys are organizers as to how much time that's going to take, how many board members, how many volunteers. And then you can kind of calculate hours and say, hey, let's step back. To Larry's point, maybe we need to say no to this. We can't do a big event every single month. Maybe it's one every quarter, or whatever it is that you're comfortable with. And that should be the expectation when volunteers come and ask, okay, well, what's my time commitment? The answer is the time commitment is what you want it to be, really.
It's obvious that Eris brings a lot of insight and clarity with the process. You know, like I said, I just got started with PAC over a year ago during the pandemic, and we made clear expectations on our norms of our meeting to keep it 1 hour. And I kid you not, when that 1 hour is done, we move to extend or we move to adjourn. So in some respects, we use the Robert's rules of engagement in terms of meetings, and we respect each other's times, because dealing with young alum or older alum, you know, they have a family, they don't have a family, like Eris said, and Chrissy and Dr. C. I mean, you have to know your audience and the time commitment. Remember, we are not getting paid to do this. No one is giving you a check. No one's giving you any money whatsoever. So it's beyond that. I just want to stress that and then go from there. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, my whole background is in program development and in coaching and consulting with college students and departments for programs. So, I mean, utilize the same principles that you did in undergrad as leaders, and then scale according to like what is achievable within your group, and also consider the requirements of your alumni chapter. So UC Davis had a requirement that we would we can host as many events as we needed, but at minimum, we needed to host something that was educational, something that was Aggie Pride, something, and then like 2 other things that I always, volunteerism. Okay, education, Aggie Pride, volunteerism, and career. So at minimum, those 4 things, and they also could have like overlapped with each other. So, but all of us being extra and always doing the most, we were like, but we also want to do all these other things. So we did. And then, like Dr. Christine said, we burnt out hella fast. So that's the whole thing, but that's also just what happens with Philam orgs. Yes. Yeah, I think that's, I don't know what else to say because I'm hella burnt out.
I hear that, Chrissy. You know, we've shared so much, and honestly, my old fart brain forgot the original questions. Can you please repeat it again? So I just want to give as thoughtful an answer as possible.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's just speaking to like the fears or the concerns about the time element of like
Right.
how long it takes to manage it, and
Yeah.
especially at the startup piece, right? Like in its first founding year, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, I there were definitely committees who burned themselves out because they were putting in like 5-6 hours a day. But yet it was doable because they didn't have a job yet, you know, and so it wasn't sustainable. And so I had to put on my therapist hat for this year and say, I'm setting boundaries. And if I recognize that you are burning out, it's not worth it. This is an important thing, but you do not need to burn out for it. And you can pull in some of the less involved committee members and alumni members to help you. If you want to put a wide call out to membership, hey, we're thinking about this program, who knows some speakers, who knows some teachers. So we did a wellness week where we had alumni giving classes, virtual classes to engage our members, things like that. Like, again, using those connections so that, but I think for this year, for us, we've really put an emphasis on delegation because I think we just did so much on our own, and we lost a lot of the people who were putting in way more time than we never asked for that. But again, being extra, it was a very successful program. And then they're like, I'm out. So I think for our requirements, we had to propose our calendar the whole year during the summer. So we worked hard during the year. Summer was our retreat time. It was our time for creating the calendar for, and we had expectations per quarter. You know, we had to have some kind of involvement in homecoming, of course. We had to do a mentorship program. But when we did that, you know, we looked at the academic calendar, like we're not going to put on programming during, you know, finals week or whatever, if it's something that involves students, for example. And I think this year we've learned that self-care is really important, that there are other things, because you all have different aspects of your lives that are not just alumni. But I think the danger when we first started was like, everything is the alumni chapter. And it certainly felt like that. And it showed in our productivity, but it also showed in the fact that we shrunk to half our EC within a few months. Like all the chairs were quitting left and right. And I don't say that to be disparaging. I just say it to say, you know who you're working with, like, and be able to recognize what is realistic in terms of capacity, bandwidth, time. Like even my vice president quit, you know, so it's just really using everyone's strengths, delegating, pulling together, getting committee members to help the chairs. And I think this year has been a little bit more cohesive because we've learned to say no to one another and to me, which is good. I encourage it. And we just got to focus on the primary events that we wanted to. We were all set up for homecoming and we were going to play UC Davis in basketball, but because that got canceled from COVID, we didn't have to do homecoming. And we're like, yes, you know, it's just weird, you know, the highs and lows of being in an alumni association. But the takeaway of just being able to create connection again, I mean, I guess that's our focus because I'm the president, but the next president could have a different focus. And it really is about creating a supportive group that will help you, you know, execute your vision for your term. Because it could be different. I mean, I agree with Aries. It's like, okay, are we going to do things like we always did? Let's keep the things that work, but let's put our own stamp on these terms. Like, what do I want us to like think about? And is my EC going to be on board with that? I mean, it's very much that type of understanding for the time commitment too. Like if everybody's like, I want to do this, but I'm not at capacity. Okay, let's figure out an agenda that's going to be doable, because that's how we support one another. So that's my 2 cents.
I wanted to speak to the saying no part. I think that's been a recurring theme in some of what we're saying, but I think for UC Davis, in becoming reestablished, in finding spaces where we were needed, and in finding people who needed us, it became hard to say no to what community wanted from us. And I think that's a really big distinction in this whole saying no theme, because your community is going to expect a lot out of you, similar to how they did in undergrad, right? And they're going to need a lot from the world. We need a lot from the world. And we also cannot provide space for all of that. And I think something that I'm reflecting on just now is that my team wanted to meet everyone's needs. We wanted to do all the things that, like, if someone was like, hey, I have this really great idea, we wanted to be that space that made it happen, right? Not realizing that sometimes we didn't have the resources to make it happen. And it's something that we're like still definitely learning and processing. So yeah, definitely like consider, like everyone has said here, like, what is it that you can do as a team and as a group and negotiate those things. And something I actually loved about meeting Atacha a couple of years ago was that she was like, you know, people started looking to us as like, oh, we have to do something with PAC because it's an alumni event. And she was like, "No, just do it, do the thing." And you know, I don't have to be there, but like, and it doesn't have to be like officially, like PAC's name doesn't have to officially be on it. But if you want to hang out, go hang out. Like, why it doesn't have to be an official PAC thing, right? And so that's something that I tried to remember as a leader, but I just haven't been that great at it because I like being in all of it. It's an ego thing. I'm gonna be real. It's an ego thing. Yeah. So really think about like, just what is it that you can do, and don't try to meet all the needs of your community. You know, you can't. It's hard.
Thank you so much for everyone sharing that. I think that just I feel like that resonates with everybody. Yes, hashtag boundaries. Like I feel you, Christy. Like I'm involved in so many things, and Alan and I, like we've had like heart to hearts about this, and he's like, Marie, I've like lost fingers like trying to count all the things you do, and I'm like, I don't know how to say no. So like I love this. Like I love the reality of what everyone is saying, because I think it feels pretty and beautiful right now, because it's like, yay, we're FAN, we just did it, you know, like our launch event was successful and everything feels so great. But at the same time, it's like, this is the reality. Like we do have to be mindful of what this means for all of us, our bandwidth, you know, our time, our energy. But at the same time, like what I see today is how still impactful each of your organizations are, even though you have said no. Right. And so I think for everyone who's here, and especially for everyone on our board, I know me and Alan are always like, I hope our board's okay. We're throwing hella shit at them right now, but know that, you know, we are thinking of you guys, and we love that this is like such a reality that came into this discussion. So I love it. I want to be mindful of time, but I do want to just like have one more question. Maybe everyone can just go around 30 seconds, but just final words, you know, anything that you can share with us. Parting words for the night, for our organization, for each other, for the community, for everybody who's here. Would love to just go around and just like do a quick, you know, final words from everyone. So whoever wants to start, and we'll just wrap it up from there.
You know, my final words for now in 30 seconds is this. Remember this, you are not your alumni chapter or university. You are not that. You are a steward in this for a limited amount of time. Enjoy it and then let it go.
Yeah, I concur with that. I mean, I keep bringing it back to like the why. You always have to be mindful of why you're doing this, and what, you know, what you have at the Filipino Alumni Network. What's great is that you have this opportunity and you can be this leader, but it's not, the expectation is that you're going to do it forever. And because after a year or two, I don't want to do it anymore. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm not down for the cause anymore. It's just, hey, now it's my time. Now let me go to another role, and let's have other folks again in the pipeline come through. But it all is, the motivation for anybody at whatever level is, again, why are we doing this? And why is it important that our community has this? It's so unique and still rare that there's a Filipino Alumni Association for an American university. Like probably a lot of our parents are Alumni Association of UP or wherever, UST, whatever universities they went to, and they now meet in the US and go to Vegas and have their reunions and stuff. That's all great, but there's a lot of power to us growing up as Phil-Ams and attending American universities and having the university's name as a part of our organization. That one raises expectations, to the points raised earlier, but also it's an asset. So if you're going to say, okay, now I'm representing San Jose State as the Filipino Alumni Network, okay, that comes with a lot of responsibility, but what is realistic for us to do and plan a measured growth phase? And again, like I said, meet your volunteers where they are. Don't be everything to everybody. And, you know, but as long as it stays consistent with your mission and you feel you're representing your community and the Filipino community in a realistic, positive way, and having fun while doing it, then you're there. And then, you know, pass it on to the next leadership and the next leadership while you still, you know, continue to support in whatever role makes sense for you.
I just wanted to say thank you for creating this space. And, you know, we all came from different universities, and yet I connected so quickly with Iris and Larry because we know the same people. Hi, Rex. And yet, I think that's what's so beautiful about an alumni association. It's like you just need an introduction, and there we just go. We just take off from there, and be proud of what you created. You know, you're creating a legacy. You're creating a part of history that the future generations of your students are going to be able to continue. And there's something so beautiful, I think, about being able to be an elder and a mentor and creating opportunities for us to keep carrying it forward and making a difference in people's lives, to know that they don't have to be alone, and that we all shared the same wonderful experience going to the schools that we did. So be proud of what you've accomplished, and just think about, like, yay, we're doing this, and we're going to make sure we keep this going somehow. But you can be very proud, and then to, you know, bring us all together too. Like, we have your back also. You know, you don't have to do this alone. And I'm going to offer my services, and I think my fellow panelists will too. Like, yeah, feel free to reach out and ask questions, because now we've created community here. So good luck to you.
I just echo what everyone has shared. Know your why, have fun, breathe, be aligned with your values, take care of yourselves, let it go, protect your peace, and know that everything that you are doing is worth something. It's always worth something. And as long as you're doing things with love and with compassion and with all of the heart that you all give to everyone, everything's going to be, it's all going to work out, and it's going to be beautiful because you are doing it. So appreciate all of your heart work to everyone here, the panelists, all of FAN, all of the people, you know, who are just here hanging out with us. I know that you all have put a lot of heart into community, and I hope that you pour some of that back into yourselves every day, a little bit.
Thank you so much. Ooh, I am about to cry, y'all. So thank you so much to our panelists tonight for joining us. This was amazing. So many good takeaways. I love it. Everybody, reactions, clap, like, oh my God, give it up for everybody who's here today. And thank you for everyone's heart. You know, seriously, we're here for a reason. Something in the universe brought us here today. And so I hope that we hold on to that, you know, and you know, take it with us wherever we go.